Show and Go Podcast, a baseball podcast to help amateur players take their game to the next level.
There's no crying in baseball.
Forget about the curveball, Ricky. Give him the heater.
You're killing me, Schmalz.
Candlesticks always make a nice wedding present.
Oh, people take vacations shorter than that. Pick me out a winner, Bobby. Now here is your Show and Go team.
Yeah. We're back.
We're back. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Show and Go. This is a baseball podcast to help and educate the amateur player, as well as coaches and parents, about the game within the game of baseball. My name is Tim Dillard, and I've been a professional pitcher for 16 years, and to my left, the captain and current big leaguer in 2016.
Are you
captain?
The captain.
I'm not the captain,
Does Joe name captains?
No, he doesn't. But
I know he's talking about the captain of our team right here. I'm assuming.
No.
Yeah.
El Capitan. Like, I'm doing Marvel references. This is a superhero.
Oh, like Captain
I thought we were
America?
talking baseball. My
Well,
bad.
I do like Captain America.
Yeah,
though.
but that's copyright infringement, so I was just going to call you captain.
okay, so forget we ever said that.
Yeah, to my left, the captain and current big leaguer in 2016 World Series MVP, Ben Zobrist.
Thank you. Am I supposed to say
Yeah,
something?
you're supposed to say hi.
Yeah, hey,
hi.
What's
He,
up?
he is in the room.
Good to see you.
And to his left is super ultra platinum elite sports trainer to the stars.
Yes.
Josh Costello.
Thank you so
I'm
much.
I'm gonna add something awesome
Every
every
episode,
time.
please.
Every time.
Run out of adjectives.
Who's wearing a Boston Red Sox hat, which I'm really disappointed that you showed up in that today.
I'm with the winners here.
Yeah, obviously.
Representing.
Front runner.
You've had a Dodger hat in here. You've had a Red Sox hat.
When are you going to wear a Cub hat, man?
Well,
It's brutal.
I represent
I'm sitting
my
right
players.
next to you, bro.
I put the Cubs hat in the closet.
How long?
Just for,
How long have we worked together?
The past is the past.
That's hilarious.
And rounding out the team of the podcast's mightiest heroes. See what I did there? Is the head baseball coach at Trevecca Nazarene University here in beautiful Nashville, Tennessee, Ryan Schmalz. What's up, man?
What's up?
How we doing? That's it.
Doing
That's
good.
all.
One question right off the get.
Yeah.
Undefeated, Zoe. You got a T-shirt, a long sleeve T-shirt right now.
Yeah.
Undefeated is written across the chest.
It's
And
orange.
I know there's a meaning behind there somewhere.
There's plenty. There's multiple meanings behind that. However, I mean, no matter what happens in your life, you got to remember
You got to approach every day like you're undefeated.
you're
right?
undefeated. That's right.
That's right.
Oh, wow.
I might be over the last 20 at bats. I'm undefeated as long as I keep stepping in the box, bro.
That's right. That's right.
I need one that says always defeated. That's what I feel like.
Whose shirt is that? You bought it from someone?
Yeah.
Is that the brand, Undefeated?
Yeah, this is not a free plug for Undefeated, but yes, it's a brand. It's a shoe store. It's legit. I like it.
Oh.
Great name. I mean, come up with a better name out there.
Truth. It should say truth on the back.
We need Show and Go shirts.
Yeah.
We need to get on that.
Yeah, we do.
They're coming.
We have mugs.
No, I made that mug.
A mug.
I made that mug on Zazzle.
When I say we, it means
It looks
Tim.
amazing.
Yeah, the quality is amazing. So I thought before we get started, did you
Yeah.
guys like the Athletic Cup Challenge?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
On the
great.
It was
It
good.
was great to grab that cup.
Piece of
Yeah.
paper out of the Athletic supporter
I'm
cup.
so uncomfortable with it, but I love it at the same time.
Well, I wrote down rules just to kind of make sure that we knew what was going on here. So the Athletic
On
Cup
your own
Challenge-
stationery,
on
by the
my
way.
own stationery. Rule number 1: everyone must draw a piece of paper from the cup.
Yep.
Rule number 2: keep your word or phrase hidden and then say it during the podcast in an attempt to make it make sense, if that makes sense. And number 3: at the end of the show, we will vote on who used the word or phrase the best or the funniest. Now, this week's topic is going to be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle villains. I don't even know if you guys know what
I
that
know
is.
one.
You know one? You better draw him. Here, pass it around.
I don't want to touch it.
Touch the cup. Touch the cup.
It's still clean.
It's still clean.
It's not
I
used.
breathed into it last time we did this.
It's
It
not-
is super clean.
It looks clean to me.
I think I've used it.
Cool. There you go.
Ryan's pumping his fist like he got something that
Yeah.
he can work with.
It's the one I know.
It's the one that's
What?
So we have to
I
say.
think I need to draw again.
You want to draw again? There's only one
Yeah,
more.
I don't even know what this
There's only
means.
one more. Okay.
Okay,
So
I'll
we
take the
have to
last
say
one then.
this in the episode.
Yeah,
This.
just
Okay.
work it in somehow.
Okay.
Yeah, without making it too obvious. All right,
Okay,
we're good.
that's
Okay,
I
here we go.
even know less about this word than the last one. So give me back the other one.
Give him Shredder.
Okay, all right. All right, so thought today's episode we talk a little bit about failure. Last time we talked about kind of individually how a player can overcome the inevitable failure in baseball. Everybody always says you hit 300, you're in the Hall of Fame, but you're failing 70% of the time, and it's so important individually to overcome that. But, we really didn't touch on the aspect of a team. Over the course of a season, a team is going to go through a lot of ups and downs. Very few teams go undefeated, but there's inevitable ups and downs as a team too. So I thought we'd talk a little bit about that today. Talk about some things to look for as a team when they're struggling, and some of the things that stand out to you guys. So I guess I'll pose a question, and actually it's a question that Zoe posed to me earlier in the year. We were playing golf one day, and Zoe asked me. He said, "What are some things that you notice happening on your team when the team is struggling? When you're down at the bottom, seemingly nothing goes right. Nothing's going your way. What are some things that happen in the team?" Tim, you look like you got something you really want to say.
No, I turned so that you wouldn't call on me, like I'm in school. Team failure. Are you do you mean it more like what can lead to that? Is that like you can sense it coming? How did the pitfalls?
Yeah, you can go that way. I mean, when you can see it coming, when it's lurking around the corner, or kind of when you're at the bottom, when it is happening.
Yeah.
Just general observations, things that you notice happening.
Yeah, well, to me, those are two different thoughts. Like, if you're talking about failure and with the team, and when you're at the bottom, like say you're at the bottom of the standings, and why do you keep showing up? Why do you keep going out there giving all that you have? And I've been a part of a lot of those teams, coincidentally. It's one of those things where you have to dig deeper. Why are you doing this? You're doing this for the people that are around you. You come in, you're a team. It doesn't mean you're always going to win. It's like a marriage. Like it's the ups and the downs. You don't just sit there and get all the good stuff of like, hey, I'm only here to hoist a trophy. No, you're here and you're in it. And you're in the thick of it. Down in the muck with the guys. And on the professional level, you go through spring training and you got to learn to love these guys. And so when you're in the clubhouse and failure is there, like the team isn't performing like you want, you got to build each other up. To me, that's one of the only ways to get out of it. And it doesn't even mean that you're going to get out of it. It just means you're going to get through it, which is really a win for me sometimes, just getting through it.
Yep.
That's a really good point. I mean, I think that just to recognize that at the start that, you're going to go through some stuff, I think is really important, and that you go through it together. Inevitably, and one of the things that Joe Madden talks about at the start of a season for us and reminds us of in spring training every year is that, hey, we're going to hit that point in the season at some point where it's going to go really bad. He just expect it. Just know that it's going to happen. We're going to reach a point where we feel like we absolutely stink as a group.
Yeah.
And there's no coming out of it. We're just going to keep feeling that way. But he's trying to prepare us for that before it ever happens.
I was just going to ask you about that because every manager or coach has a different personality. Some guys are ultra intense, and Joe seems like somebody who's really unique, in that. Like seems to kind of a looser, take pressure off. Just elaborate on that. What are some ways that in the Cubs clubhouse that he does that when you are going through that, even though he warns you that it's going to come, well, you're there. What are some things that you can recognize that he does to help give you perspective or help get you through that in some way?
Tell your secrets. Coach is asking.
Rip it open.
Yeah, well, I think every coach has to do that in their own way. And Joe's a unique guy, and he's always kind of tried to stay outside of the box in regard to just doing what everybody else has always done. So he has his own ways, and kind of the early ways that he did that, and he still does occasionally, is by these dress-up trips, right? He always tries to keep it light, keep our focus sometimes just getting away from the game itself by saying, hey, we're going to dress up for this trip or that trip, or which has nothing to do with anything baseball-wise whatsoever. It just has to do with having fun and trying to see guys' personalities kind of come out in a new, different way outside of the clubhouse and within the clubhouse. So that's one of the things that he's done for years and years, and it's well documented. Everybody knows, that he has these various trips that he asks us to dress up for. But he's the first one that did it at that level. Let's be honest. Like, what other major sport coach
Yeah.
tells their players he wants them to dress up in pajamas for a trip.
Did he bring like a 20-foot python into the clubhouse? And I remember seeing this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's also true. You know, all the documented stuff, it's all true.
Wow.
You know, he definitely has made it, you know, he brings in the zoo at times, which is what you're alluding to. I walked into the clubhouse, I mentioned this before, and a penguin stared me in the face at one point. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that he does to try to get your mind off of your struggles on the field and out of your own head, because we all, when we're struggling, we all go into this, you know, place inside of our own heads where we're trying to figure out what's going wrong and how we got to change things, right? Sure. And he's trying to pull us out of that and say, hey, it's not as bad as you think it is. Mm-hmm. It's not as serious as you think it is as a group. And let's just remember that this should be fun. This should always be fun.
Yeah, because you do got to kind of get in there and figure out what's wrong and make the necessary adjustments, but you kind of got to keep that in its rightful place. You know, there's another big world out there bigger than the struggles. So
absolutely,
that's
You
awesome.
got to have balance.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but I think the other thing that he does really well in the midst of those struggles is he tries to take pressure off of players from a media standpoint as well. And I know when you're younger, you don't really have the media side of things, but you have the parental side of things, right?
Yeah, there's
And
still
so
pressure, though.
There's a lot of pressure. From
those guys that don't have the media still feel the same way that the guys do. I mean, everybody feels it the same way.
Absolutely.
Especially-
You might be feeling it from your administration if you're a college coach, or you know, you're a college player. You might be feeling it from your parents or your friends or anybody that's looking at you to assume you should be successful.
And especially if you have parents that are like, you know, big on Instagram and Twitter, you know, so like the social media. Kids are dealing with social media.
Yeah, there's
That is really true.
absolutely.
I'm sorry. That was I was meant as a joke, but it is kind of sad.
But it's true. That adds pressure that it didn't used to exist for players. Now, you know, there's a lot of things coming at you from the outside, and you're trying to maintain this level of I'm really good at this, and we're really good at this, and we're going to be the best. And you might have even made predictions at the start of the season, like, hey, we're going to win it all this year. And then you reach that inevitable point in the season when everyone's looking at you and saying, you failed, you stink, you know, even as a group. And it's what you do in those moments as a team that really matter.
Yeah.
I think Joe really finds a way to take pressure off of players and put it on himself at times when the pressure is coming from the outside. He's like, hey, you know, he kind of distracts. He's a really good, I mean, as much as you kind of have to be a master of distraction at times if you're a head coach, to keep your players from focusing on the failure at the time when you're really struggling. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a time and a place for that. You know, sometimes there's, you know, for me, maybe early in the season when the guys are feeling a little stress, a little pressure, sometimes I'll almost try to make it even worse, you know, to try to make it worse, to try to teach them there's always going to be pressure. You know, maybe get on them a little bit more and say, look, you know, you're going to have to find a way to deal with this individually because there's always pressure. There's always something on the line. And you have to be comfortable when you're uncomfortable, you know, and that pressure, that added stress, the dealing with failure kind of, you know, and there's different strategies of doing this, you know, as a coach, but kind of over the wear and tear of the season, you know, and you kind of get later in the year, you've kind of been through some battles. Then I think, at least me, I try to take a little bit more off their plate, try to provide some levity to it a little bit, help them get through it once they're kind of in the middle of the grind. But early on, especially younger players, they don't know how to deal with that. You know, they're kind of used to being really successful, having everything go their way. And then when they do hit that failure, that rock bottom the first time, and their head's spinning. And sometimes you got to, you know, lose the battle to win the war.
That's tough. I've experienced coaches battle with that, and you can see, they're like, what do I do? Do I make them do sprints again? Mm-hmm. Like, if you guys lose another game, we're doing, you know, this was in high school probably, or even before that, but that's a tough spot, you know, when you're losing consistently, if we're talking about that. But, you know, baseball is a big momentum. It's very, what's the word I'm thinking of here?
Momentum shift.
Yeah, it's all about momentum. It takes one guy to kind of get you out of it. You're talking about when you are in tough spots as a team. That's the one thing that I've experienced is, honestly, it just takes one guy. It just takes one guy to get that hit, or that one guy to just be funny to lighten things up.
Well, you need someone to feel the heartbeat of what's going on in the clubhouse, whether it be a coach or a player or whatever's going on. There needs to be an awareness of, okay, we're in a funk. Maybe we need to change something, whatever that is. I had a college coach, and it was his first time as a head coach, and we go through, the season. We do really well, the ups and downs, whatever. We get in playoffs, and you could just tell when everybody got off the bus that this is a little bit more pressure. Like the usual jokes and we're laughing and we're relaxed. He could tell it was a little off. So we took infield before the game. And what we did was we did it without a baseball. Have you ever heard of this? Like we took infield, outfield.
Yeah, no ball.
Phantom. We called it phantom infield. So here we are, bunch of, grown, what are we in college? 20, 18. So you got these guys and we're out there and we're just pretending there's a baseball. Our coach was like, had a fungo bat and he's throwing up nothing and pretending to hit it. And we got guys diving, like backhanding balls, and I'm catching and I'm sitting there catching the ball from first and then I'm pretending to flip it to him and he's pretending I'm flipping him bad. He's like, come on, man. I'm like, oh, my bad. Like, you realize this is fake. You're kind of getting into this. But to me, he wanted to do something. He didn't know what to do. He just knew that we need to do something to snap out of it. And he just came up with something really ridiculous. We laughed about it. We went out there. I think we got our brains kicked in, but it kind of helped us moving in through like playoffs and things like that in college. I mean, you just need that one thing. It could come from a coach. It could come from a player.
Yeah, I think that, you honestly, you see the downcast faces, right? You see everybody gets a little quieter. There's less jokes, less conversations that happen in the team. And somebody needs to do that. Somebody needs to pull everybody out of that and kind of bring the mood back up somehow. And there's always been, on every good team I've ever been on, there's always been a few guys. It could be like the last guy on the bench that barely ever plays.
Yep.
But he brings that something to the team that like lightens the mood or says a joke at the right time.
Who are some guys that have done that come to mind when you start talking about that you've played with?
Well, I'll tell you one guy recently the last couple of years was John Jay. I wouldn't say he's like the real funny guy, but he definitely is a guy that's always trying to lighten the mood and always trying to encourage and build guys up. He was a great guy for us a couple years ago. Tommy LaStella has been like that for the last several years with the Cubs as well. Gosh, awesome. I mean, it's these guys that, from the fans' perspective, they don't know how much that makes a difference, for a team. But those guys that have that ability, especially on the bench, to control the atmosphere and mood of the bench, it's really, really important. And you can have coaches that are that way too. We had, Eric Hinsky was a guy that comes to mind in regard to that. He played for a long time, and he was in the cage. He was our assistant hitting coach in 2016 when we won the World Series, and he had a way of joking at times and making something funny when it wasn't that funny at the but he had a way of doing that. There's these guys that just find ways to build the team up in regards to that.
I got one outrageous story.
Let's hear it.
Yeah, I love this.
Yeah. I don't know. Should I use names? I'll use names. He'll never listen to this. Brewers picked up Mark Kotze. It was 2011. And, he'd been around. That guy had probably, at this time, maybe 13, 14 years in the show. And, he was one of those guys that went on these teams and was just an older guy, an older veteran influence in the clubhouse. He didn't play that much. And so I was kind of like, hey, man, I'll hang out with you because I don't play that much either. So kindred spirits. So one day we're having a meeting right before playoffs, and Ron Renicky was the manager. And he walks in. It's very like we're excited, we're nervous. Everyone's kind of a little bit scared. Like everyone's kind of, it's the tension in there with a knife for some reason. And in mid-sentence talking about, I don't know, probably something very strategic, Mark Kotze walks in wearing candy bikini. Wow. We can edit that out. But it was a candy bikini. And that was it. That was all he was wearing. And he walks up and he goes, listen, guys, you got to go out there and play your heart out. I've never laughed so hard. Oh my gosh. But, I mean, it was just, I'm not saying go dress awesome. Up, but there needs to be something sometimes. And, yes, it can come from a player. And it can come from a player that's not the guy that's on the field all the time making the impact. It can be anybody.
That's the great thing about baseball, though, isn't it? I mean, there's these stories that happen behind the scenes on, something that somebody outside of the team never would have guessed, never would have known. But, baseball guys just seem to do this stuff, just kind of comes natural. But it does take that kind of that awareness when you're in the middle of that situation to kind of recognize what's happening, think about what you can do to help it, instead of just succumbing to that. When I think about a team struggling, I'm thinking about you're down by 4 runs. It's in the 8th inning. Nothing's going right. You've lost 3 or 4 games leading up to that, and everybody's just kind of looking at each other. And one of the things I've noticed on a team when they're struggling is one of the first things that happens is the communication changes. Guys get really quiet.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you can just feel it. Everybody that's been on a baseball team knows exactly what I'm talking about when, you're just kind of watching the game, looking at each other like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop, like you don't know what to do. You just almost get uncomfortable talking about it,
and everyone else feels it too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
It's like on that day, everyone decided to show up and everybody was a little bit off. Like the stars aligned and you're just walking in there and like, what is going on? There's like an eerie air. Yeah. I'm sure it happens, everywhere across the board. But one of the things I think is amazing when we just started bringing all this up about what to do when team failure, we haven't addressed anything that's happened on the field. Right? Like your first thing that you think of is we need to do something on the field.
Yep.
Right? That's the first thing. When you're in the moment, that's what you need to do. But we've addressed everything, and it's been off the field. I mean, right?
Right.
Chances are anybody that's listening has never heard of that. They want to see something on the field. Oh, you're losing? Try to win. All right.
Yeah.
But it happens a lot off the field. Not everything has to be on the field.
That's one of the things that makes baseball different is trying harder, is not always the best thing to do, right? Because
do less.
Yes,
do
that's
less.
so
It's going to
true.
be a thing. It's going to be a thing.
In football, it's not like this, man. You get mad, you do something wrong, you go and
use that energy.
Yeah,
use
you
that
can
anger.
go and
Heck yeah.
it's a contact sport. You go tackle somebody, or there's collisions happening all over. In baseball, it's not like that, man. It's the harder you try,
the more you strike
it usually is not going to go. It's not going to go your way.
Yeah.
When you're hitting and you tense up, your bat's slower, right? Or something like that. Or as a pitcher, you tense up, you feel those shoulders coming by your ears because you're nervous or all that anxiety, and then you go to throw it. It's not going to be as crisp. It's not going to be as believable of a pitch as you would be if you're out there relaxed. So how do you go out there and play relaxed in the moment of all that failure is probably what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think in 16, just so people know, a lot of people wonder what we're doing when we get to first base. We look at the bench and make some sort of sign towards the bench.
Sign language, yeah.
In 16, the second half of the season, 'cause in June we hit a really bad rough patch. Really bad. Like we were like one of the worst teams in the league, in especially the second half of June, early July going into the All-Star break, basically. We were just bad. And we had a 12-game lead that dwindled down to 6.5 or something like that before the break. And I want to say we lost 2 or 3 against the Pirates in Pittsburgh. And Joe always has his meeting. He has 3 meetings in the year. Start of the year, mid-season, July, All-Star break, and right before the postseason at the end of the season.
Can I just pause you right there?
Yeah.
Those are the only team, organized team meetings he has.
That's it. Those are the only
I think that
3.
would really surprise people. Because there's a lot of people out there that are not like that.
We
that
had
are
a
have meetings about the next meeting, and then it's like
we had a meeting before we came in here.
Yeah,
he's running a Major League Baseball club, 3 meetings a year.
3 major meetings. Yeah, that's it. All the rest are just one-on-one conversations for him, or but yeah, that's the only time he addresses the entire team altogether. And it's hats off to him. I think that's been developed over a number of years, seeing how in the past when he was a part of teams and they had too many meetings and it just doesn't have the intended effect. Yeah. But he knows that that's his opportunity to really say something. I remember that year where him saying something basically like, "Hey, this is that time of the year that we talked about in spring training. We've stunk. We know it. We're going to turn this around. Everybody's tired. We need a break. We had played 23 out of 24 days, and we were tired." And he just reminded us of that and said, "Hey, we're going to come back after the break and be just fine." And sure enough, we were. But going into that All-Star break, I remember everybody just being like, "Man, what is happening?" Everybody's panic mode. So after the All-Star break, or I think it was right even before, maybe that series, we started doing this thing when we got to first base where you basically hold one hand up with a fist and the other one is pushing it like you're pushing a button, and that was a panic button. So we were all pushing the panic button, and it was a way of making light. It was a way of making light of this moment where everybody felt like that panic was happening. and guys were like, "Hey, yeah, we're going to push the panic button. Who cares? It's not that big of a deal. We'll be just fine." Yeah. And so, I mean, what other things have you guys thought of in regards to avoiding panic or when you feel like people are trying to push that?
I think pretending it's not going to happen. Him getting out in front of it and going, "Hey, you're going to hit a rough patch this season." that's good. It makes people aware that, we're not immune to it. Doesn't matter how good you are, how good you think you are. That's what's great about baseball. Anybody can beat anybody at any time. So to get out in front of that and to say, hey, this could be a pitfall, we're addressing it now so that when it happens, we're not surprised by it, to me is huge. Everyone should do that at every level.
Yeah, when you shine a light on it, something like that, like maybe some guys were in a little bit desperation mode and we're pushing the panic button, but when you bring light to it like that, it's like all of a sudden it just kind of takes a little bit of the pressure off. The good teams, the best teams I've coached have always had that guy, could be the star player or it could be the last guy on the bench, that had some sense of humor. I think humor, we've talked about this before.
Mm-hmm. We talked about it last time,
humor,
individual failure.
Humor is incredibly valuable here.
Yep.
It just like physiologically almost takes pressure off. A guy cracks a joke in the dugout or somebody does something and it's just like everybody just, okay, you can take a deep breath, release some of that tension and go on about your business. I think we lose sight of that sometimes. And as coaches, I think, myself included, we fall victim to this a lot. Like everything has to be focused, it has to be intense, it has to be done the right way, done with a purpose. And our grip as a coach, sometimes our grip can be so tight on the team that it has an unintended effect or an impact. And if you can loosen that just a little bit and allow guys to be themselves, I think that can, you lose a little bit of control like that, but you gain a lot in return.
Yeah, that's why I think having too many meetings is just going to make things worse because you're just talking about what you already know. I think that's why the good coaches just kind of sometimes are just silent. You're like, oh, man, what's he going to say? And he just goes about his day. He's waiting for someone on the team to just, step it up and get that big play or whatever it is to kind of break that, whether it's humor or a big play in the field. I've seen both.
Does this translate to managing a group of people? Because I know that you, Costello, manage a lot of people at your training job, and they're always looking to you, right? They're looking at you and going, well, how is he going to react to this situation right here? How have you seen reacting well versus not reacting well affect your team of people?
If you're one of the main guys, whether it's a coach or in business, everyone's watching you, whether you know it or not. And it's huge. It sets the tone. And I think that's why, you've given examples about Madden just setting the tone of how he operates. He's creating space. He's creating energy. He's creating space for people.
That's a great way of putting it.
Yeah, it's a good leader creates space for an environment to grow and to be successful, and for people just to be themselves and not be in that panic mode. But it really starts with the leader creating that space, putting the right people in that space, and then being a good leader by how they react or not react. Because that feeds off into everything else. Because I've had coaches where they would react, and then they're trying their best, but they're just reacting out of anger, and then that puts stress on everybody else, and then just makes things really worse. And you just kind of stay in this cycle, and you never get out of it.
Okay, there's one aspect of this I want to bring up that I observe a lot in younger players, and that's body language. When a player or a team is struggling, you could walk up to the ballpark and the scoreboard could be off, and you can tell immediately, almost within 5 minutes, you can see who's winning the game, and you can tell a lot about what that team is going through just by observing the body language of the players. Mm-hmm. I want your guys' opinion on that. Like, what have you observed? What have you noticed with body language as players? Are you aware of that a lot? Like, Tim, you're chomping at the bit here.
No, I raised my hand. I don't know why I did that. I was just stretching.
Still in school.
No, when I think of it, I think of one guy that made an impact for me. It was 2007. I was with R.A. Dickey. I'm pretty sure I've already brought him up several times in this. I like the name drop. And Dickey throws knuckleball, one Cy Young, no big deal. But in 2007, he would come to the ballpark, and this is who he was, right? And so that was who he was every single day.
This is in AAA?
This is in AAA, 2007. And he was the worst pitcher statistically in the entire league the first half of the season. If it happened to me, I'd be losing my mind. I would not be cool, calm, funny. I wouldn't be myself. I'd be super stressed. I'd be flipping tables, right? He was the same guy every day. And I thought, man, what a testament.
It's incredible.
Right? This guy coming in here, and it was very infectious because the guys knew that he was struggling, and he would come in with the same attitude. He was the same guy. He's telling us, the funny jokes. He's hanging out with everybody. He's getting involved in people's lives.
That's impressive.
And I was like, dude, this guy is, this is amazing. It was a huge impact in me and my career and probably, the rest of my life. And what's amazing is that the second half, we were actually in a hotel in Iowa, I believe. We were watching A Night at the Museum on TV. I don't know why. He calls everyone in his room. He's like, I'm going to order a movie. And we're like, oh, what are you going to do? And he's
Night
like,
at the Museum is
Night
like
at the
that?
Museum. I'll never forgive him for that. So he's sitting there with his Bruce Lee T-shirt on, and he kind of looks at me and goes, Dilly. I was like, what's up, Dickie? And he goes, you know what, Dilly? He's funny. He goes, Dickie's been throwing too many balls with the knuckleball. I got to throw more strikes. I was like, okay, Dickie, that's awesome. Literally from that day forward, he made an adjustment and became the best pitcher in the league the second half, and he won PCL Pitcher of the Year. Now, he didn't make it to the big leagues that year, but every year after that, until last year, he was in the big leagues.
Wow.
So, I mean, and he's the same guy. When I see him, he's the same guy. I think consistency is huge. Huge for a player and for a team. And so when you're talking about body language, there is some inconsistency going on, maybe with a team as a whole, if it's a lot that's going on, but definitely individually as a player.
When you say consistency, though, you're not talking about consistent performance. You're talking about consistency in who they are, how they act on the field, off the field, how they come to the ballpark, the way they treat their teammates.
I look at it like I tell my kids all the time. I was like, listen, I want you to be you. When you go to school, I want you to still be you. When you're on the team doing whatever, be you. Like, I want you. Don't be somebody different when you leave the house. Don't be somebody different when you come into the house.
Yeah.
Just be you wherever you're at. And I think a lot of times people go to the field, they're just like, I'm going to be somebody different, or I'm going to be somebody different than I am around my parents, than I am, in the clubhouse. And for me, that identity shift for me was started in 2007.
Cost, do you see this when you're training kids, high school kids, when they come in to work out with you? I bet you can see immediately by the way their body language is what they're going through in their life, right?
Yeah, it's tough. As a kid, it's hard to – you're just figuring that out, how to not let your emotions control you and take you, for weeks into the next game and, the next month. It's just a learning process, just like anything. Yeah. But, yeah, that's huge because – If you can't take control of that, mentally and emotionally of what's going on, no one likes to lose. But like he gave an illustration of Dickie, like you saw it. He wasn't faking. He was not allowing, what was happening on the field affect him, And so he was bringing good energy for himself, setting him up to be successful in the second half. And that energy was also feeding off on other players. Because I'm really big on that within the dugout. You know how it goes with energy. Just you got a few guys that are like complaining or maybe more whatever dramatic about the losses, and then that just feeds into everybody else, and it's really hard to break out of that.
Well, being a consistent person in that regard is very attractive to other people. When you're being very forthcoming, transparent, people are willing to come to you with things that are going on. I get that in the clubhouse all the time. That's one thing I try to be. I try to be the same person all the time. And I find that guys can come to me in confidence and tell me things like, hey, this is, I'm having a hard time or whatever it is, because they need somebody to talk to. They need somebody to go, or they just need someone to listen to them complain, right? Like you can just hear somebody talk about, here's all the stuff I'm having trouble with, blah, blah, blah. And they just need a friendly hand to be like, hey, man, we'll get through this together.
I think one thing that occurs to me that I get asked about during these times a lot by media people is, they want an answer for why. Tell us why you guys are struggling, or tell there's some reason that everyone wants to know to figure out why. But that's really not the important thing at all, because the reality is it's already happened. Whatever the reason is, you're already there.
It's real.
It's happening. Mm-hmm. It's not important why as much as it is what you're going to do with it now.
Yeah.
What now? So what? Now what? One of our strength and conditioning guy, Tim Buss, has a T-shirt that he wears around the clubhouse, especially if we've had a bad day the day before, and it says, "So what? ... Now what?" It's just a great phrase for turning the page. And the point is, this is a time that the team heart, the team metal, whatever's deep inside as a group, is going to come out and be shown for what it really is. And that's how you're actually going to grow. If you take that situation as a group and panic and blame shift and point the finger, and you're always like downcast about it and trying to avoid the negative and just kind of avoid the situation as a whole, well, the reality is you're not going to grow through it. So you've got to really take it on, accept it for what it is, and begin to positively move forward as a group and find the things that you can focus on that will continue to move you guys in the right direction. And that's the things that we've been talking about I think as a whole, but as an individual, when you're in that place and you sense it in the entire group, everyone's got a responsibility there.
Absolutely.
To not look back and not point the finger, but look outward and be positive and start focusing on what can we do to continue to move things in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree. When you're going through, the shredder of a season, I think that just the awareness of your body language, I know I'm beating that drum a little bit, but it's just so infectious when a team is out there and even though you're down, if you find a way to have a little bit of extra bounce in your step, you find a little bit of a way to go about your business like you just were on a winning streak, like things are going your way. Sometimes people think that the way you feel is kind of a result. Your body language is a result of the way you feel. Well, that can be in reverse too. You can change your body language, and it's going to have an effect on the way you feel. It's going to have an effect on your performance, the way your teammates are going about their business, and it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be in reverse like that.
Yeah,
that energy level is so important, especially in the dugout.
Huge.
And moving from dugout to the field and back from the field to the dugout, because everyone's looking at you, especially in those moments, and even the way you move around the dugout. So if I'm struggling, and everybody knows, and I've screwed something up for the team, well, they're kind of looking at your body language in that moment and looking at how you're going to react. So if you bebop out of the dugout and head onto the field, and really, really have an energy, even though things are struggling, then people are going to be like, hey, he's good, I'm good, we're good.
Yeah. Because you got to be rock steady in that way. You got to have that foundation where, hey guys, I screwed up, but just like being contagious, of good things on the field and hitting contagious, all that kind of stuff. It's negative with the body language. If a guy, especially a leader on a team, or especially a guy that just went out there and blew it, as soon as he hangs his head and his shoulders slump and he's, the other guy's going to go, you know what, maybe if he's doing it, I'm allowed to do it. And the next guy's like, well, if he's doing it, I'm going to do it because that's kind of how I feel right now. And that's toxic. Is what that is.
That's as toxic as Rat King. I don't know how am I gonna
dynamite drop.
How do I even fit this in? Rat King. I can't even. I was waiting so long for a moment.
That's so
and
great.
I thought Ryan did good. Ben killed him.
Man.
You just said Rat King.
That was great.
Oh,
I love the Ninja Turtles. Where were we?
Well,
we got a few more minutes here.
One of the things that I think it's important to realize is what's human nature in this. What's natural to do when you're struggling is to kind of go internal, withdraw sometimes, to go in, look inside yourself and feel sorry for yourself. I tell my guys all the time, you got to fight the flesh, right? You got to fight what's natural with human nature and really go external. And I think that the communicating with teammates and kind of getting outside of yourself and not, I guess, sulking, feeling sorry for yourself, beating yourself up. I think that's something I did a lot, when I was younger, is I would just crush myself. If I didn't help the team or didn't play up to my potential, I would just beat myself up over it. Everything was internal. It was directed to myself, and I would never look outside of myself for anything. And I think that's probably pretty common with a lot of guys.
That's a great comment there, because those are the times where you got to just turn away from yourself, and who knows, maybe you just start talking to some other guys on the team just to get your mind off of it. Guys you haven't talked to that much, or try to help out in any way, just to get your mind off of it. I think we've talked about that quite a bit today. It's what you're thinking about really can be good or bad for you.
I think the big thing to snap people out of it, it's like no one's making you play baseball. I mean, maybe your parents are, and parents don't make your kid play something they don't want to do. But I look at guys all the time, and they come to complain, misery loves company. Like, you can come to me and talk to me about problems in like a professional way, like a man or whatever, or you can come in and just be like, oh, here, listen to me complain. It's like, I don't want to listen to you complain. You don't have to be here. You can leave. Like, there's no guard at the door. You can walk out and leave. If you don't want to be out there, then just leave. But if you're going to be out there, respect the game, respect your teammates, respect what everyone else is trying to do. And that should whip you into shape pretty quick. I think it's a fine line. You got to play the fence of, do I need to push this kid a little more at times, or I need to kind of back off? And a lot of times with the body language can be fixed with, listen, just, you don't have to be here. If this is how you're going to treat this game, then you don't need to be here. Sorry, I had to.
No, there's
get tough.
I think it's important for people to recognize the difference between self-awareness enough to know what they're doing and how they're feeling, how it might be affecting everyone else around them.
Yeah.
And you need to know. So if there's somebody that has that kind of body language, or they're having conversations around the team that are kind of a cancer, or there's things just you can tell that their attitude just stinks.
Yeah.
Like, there has to be a conversation there. It's a one-on-one, take them away from the group. Maybe it's coach to player, maybe it's player to player, but maybe it's coach to coach. Maybe it's coach to parent. Maybe it's parent to coach. I don't know, but there's a relationship there where
I'm confused.
where there's some accountability as a group. Like, hey, maybe you should consider how your attitude might be affecting everybody, because you're important, and not coming at it at like with my teammates at times. The ones that I've respected the most are the ones that have come at me and said, hey, you make a big impact on this club. They start with that. They start with, hey, you're important to us. You're important to this group. They don't lead with, dude, your attitude stinks.
Yeah.
Change it.
Yeah.
They lead with, hey, you're important to this entire group, and so when
it's
you're
disarming.
Exactly. When you're struggling, hey, we're all struggling. We feel it with you, man. We're right there with you. Just know that, like, hey, if you can keep your attitude up for us, it's going to help everybody.
So let me ask you this: those are hard conversations sometimes when you got to confront somebody about their attitude or whatever. What keeps people from having those conversations with their teammate or with their coach?
Fear. I mean, I think that's a big thing. Nobody wants to be the guy that makes an uncomfortable situation happen. But guess what? It's going to keep getting worse until that conversation happens. So the guys that have the biggest gut, that have the most, fortitude, I think, in their gut, are the guys that are able to know that, hey, this is going to help. If I just bring this up, it's going to help in the end. It's going to, and we've had to have multiple conversations at times with the same player at various times in my career. And they don't always get it the first time, and they might not get it the third time or the fifth time. But, like, the reality is, you're a group, you're a unit, and you pick each other up in those moments. You do the best you can to pick each other up. So if one guy's having a tough time with his attitude, sometimes the other guys have to balance it out by being that much more funny or being that much more positive, because not everybody's going to be in a good place all the time throughout the season.
Yeah, that's just realizing that it is hard to have those conversations, but it's worth it. Mm-hmm. It's worth it to have the courage to confront somebody, to point it out in a productive way, not yelling and screaming and getting in their face and pinning them against a locker or something like that. But
sometimes you got to,
but it's worth it. You either do that or you run the risk of what could happen if you don't. Bad's going to get to worse, and it's going to get, potentially toxic, or whatever the ramifications are of that.
And it's not just one guy that always polices that. It's everybody. There's been a lot of times where I kept quiet because I was like, I don't know if this is my role. But if it's on your heart and you're like, man, I need to have this convo because I see things that other guys don't see, and it's affecting the team. Like, if you see it, it's your responsibility. If you're a part of the team, to just have that conversation. I
mean, if you care, you're going to go to that person with love. I mean, that's the only way I can look at a team, is that you're in a battle. You're in a battle of, it's the grind of how long it is. It's the grind of, I'm putting my entire life on pause to make this my life. And I'm doing it with, 30 or 40 other guys, or all the people that are involved. Like, this is a family. This is what we're doing. If you just think this is something, that you're just doing in your free time, then you need to realize how important it is to everybody else. And you got to think of it as a battle. When you're in that hole and you have a back against somebody, you want somebody there that you trust. So you're in it together. Like, hey, we signed up for this. We're doing this. Like, we need you on board. We're not going to be able to pull this whole thing with just us. We need you there in whatever capacity that is. If you're having trouble in this area of what's going on, then you need to strengthen in some other area, right? If you're having a down attitude, then, make up for that with encouraging somebody else. Like, find whatever it is, whatever hole that you can fill, you need to get in there and fill it.
Yeah, I like that you use the word family, and I know you use the word family with your team, Coach, a lot. That word is, if you take, baseball is really a microcosm of life in a lot of ways. I've said this before, but think of your family and the importance of giving your own kids, those of us that are parents, giving your own kids that margin, at times that we talked about earlier in the show, and then, also giving them that there's a little kick in the pants at times, or accountability that you have to hold them to, or their attitudes at times. But the reality is, at the end of the day, they're part of it.
Yeah.
You're not getting rid of anybody. It's just about building each other up. It's about bringing each other up. And when, as a group, you're all struggling, you're all failing as a group, everyone individually has to take a look at how they can build the group up. Everybody shouldn't just go into their own shells and become more of individuals. That's when everybody needs to pull together even that much more. And that's what the good teams I've been on, that's what happens. When things are really going bad, everybody huddles a little bit closer together, and they build each other up that much more.
That's awesome.
That's unity, right? Like selflessness is going to breed unity. So figure out what you can do with somebody else, and that brings the whole thing together. And everyone trying to serve everybody else. The next thing you know, you have a team full of leaders, because that's what it is. To lead, you have to serve.
Nice.
Any
Drop the mic.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Good, man.
There's a lot. This is rich, man. There's a lot of good stuff here. Well, any finishing touches? Any last thoughts you guys want to throw in, or tie a bow around this thing?
It's good. It's a good thing when there's team failure going on. It's good that you care. Just know that, number one, if it bothers you a little bit that the air in the clubhouse or that in the dugout something's going on, it's good that you care. If you don't see it and you don't care, there's something probably wrong on the inside of you. But if it bothers you a little bit, that's a good thing. Now, how you go about that, I would seek some wisdom in that way, or listen to more podcasts. But it's a good thing that you do care. It's good to care.
Yeah, don't accept what you see if it's not good. I think I've been on teams where everyone just kind of like, yeah, this is just how it's going to go for the whole year. Ooh. So you're gonna, in those tough spots, you're gonna feel that tension. Like, just know that and push against it. Don't give in. Talk to people, whatever. Have those tough conversations. Lighten the mood, whatever it is. But you can't accept it, because that'll really make an impact in a bad way.
That's good. Dang, I should have said that.
I would say know that the numbers, the wins and the losses, are not a representative of how things are going with you together as a team. You may be struggling on the field, but that doesn't mean that you have to struggle as a unit, as a group. That could mean that you guys band together that much more. That could mean that you guys build each other up that much more. That could mean, that it ends up being one of the closest teams you've ever been a part of. That team failure doesn't have to drive a divide in between everybody. It can also bring everybody together. And that's one of the things that I think when you're dealing with team failure, it's really, really a blessing to be a part of a group that bands together and supports each other in those moments. So each individual needs to know their part in that is important. If you're struggling as an individual on the team and the team's struggling, sometimes I feel like, man, I did nothing for the team. I had a terrible game and the team lost, and then I'm like heaping all this failure on myself, when the reality is, you know what? I need to recognize there were so many teammates during that game that tried to pick me up. This group of people, like, get it off yourself and think about how, man, there's so many, that guy's doing really well right now. Like, I can build him up. I can remind him of how great he's doing. Like, that's the kind of stuff that takes team failure and turns it into, like, just one of the best things.
Yeah, I would say lean in. Lean into the failure a little bit. People, they want to avoid failure with everything they have. They want to run from it, avoid it, hide from it. I'd say lean into it. Dang. All it is an opportunity to grow. It's a chance to learn. It's a chance to get better. You got to embrace it. There's so many opportunities to grow in this game, and and outside of the game too, in life. And there's going to be failures that everybody experiences, on the field or off, and you just got to lean into those, because it's through those failures that, as a team, or as an organization, or as a family, it's through those failures that are going to make the success that you achieve even greater. And that success that you can achieve, that growth that you can have, is going to taste even sweeter because of those failures that you went through. And I think you just got to look at it for what it is, and think to yourself, what can you learn from it? And then there's a lot of powerful things that can happen. Yeah,
this goes way past the game, because the game's going to end at some point. For the listeners, out of any sport, this is just my opinion, when it comes to failure, like, you're gonna learn about failure a lot in this game compared to other games. Just know that it's a process, and it's more than just on the field. you're going to learn things that go way beyond that.
Well, we all know about personal failure, but on a corporate level, when you're dealing with everyone around you, you need to learn how to deal with that too. As you go through life, it's not going to always be baseball. It's whatever you're doing. There's going to be that corporate failure, and what do you do in those moments?
Tim, I think you won.
The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle.
What did he say? What was it?
Yeah,
Rocksteady.
Yeah, I don't know. Ben bebopping out of the dugout.
That was good too. That was great.
What about
Rat King lost? It's your fault for not being more of a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle.
The Shredder was the only one I'd even heard of. I never even heard of any
I was
of these
going to
things.
say, you need to explain to some people. A lot of these people probably don't even know who those characters are. Or what.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Well, yeah, I thought we were going to be talking about Leonardo and Donatello.
That would have been easy.
Yeah.
That's why
So
I went.
easy.
That's why I went villains. All right.
I don't even know who Bebop is.
Yeah, you bebopped out of the dugout. All right, well, that does it for this episode of Show and Go. If you have any questions or comments, topics you'd like to hear discussed on future episodes, feel free to interact with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at The Show and Go. And make sure to visit our website, theshowandgo.com. And listen, don't be afraid to write us a home run review on your preferred podcast platform. Give us 5 stars. Why not? Help us, our team morale and all that. Yeah. Help us in the podcast universe. I'd like to thank the boys of the Theocast podcast for letting us use their equipment today and every day until they legally stop us. On behalf of myself, Zoe, J Money, and Coach, thanks for listening, and join us next time on The Show and Go.
Oh my gosh, they're huge. I love them.
Great, but I had no idea who.
Huge.
The Shredder.
Well, I know.
I know the Rat King. He controlled all the rats in the sewer.
Oh yeah.
I don't even know who
Rocksteady, Bebop and Rocksteady. Rocksteady was the Rhino.
Tim, your brain.
I don't remember the Rocks.
I love Ninja Turtle. I still do. The movie.
Sean Casey, where
No,
he was a
not-
friend.
Sean Casey? No. Casey Jones.
Casey Jones.
Sean Casey.
Sean Casey.
Sean Casey was a left-handed hitter.
Yeah. Casey Jones was like bad, but also good.